With me today is Paul Terry. Paul's one of our longest tenured optimization consultants. We're also joined by Jim Rushforth and Kurt Myers, two of our top optimization solution engineers. This webinar is part of a weekly series we're holding where each week we focus on specific optimization and personalization topics, and specifically lessons we've learned with our customers that we think are valuable to pass on. Not ignoring the unique circumstances in which we're living and working, however, we're also spending a few minutes each week outside the theme to talk about the current common challenges and trends we're seeing across the customer base. So today, in terms of agenda, we'll lead with that. Then we'll move on to this week's topic of fail fast, fail cheap. And then we'll answer any questions you have in either area at the end of the session. With that, I'm going to hand things off to our optimization consultant, Paul Terry. Paul?
Yeah, sure, thanks. So this week in optimization, it looks like kind of the optimization, the retail sea change. Optimization teams are being tasked with optimizing not only their website, but playing a key role in helping the entire industry accommodate the major shifts in the business due to COVID-19. Comprehensive and nimble optimization tools are now playing a vital role in this work. E-commerce is struggling to fulfill orders in a timely fashion due to a tsunami of online orders and sporadic supply chain issues. We see a temporary shift away from A/B into fast-moving functionality changes and targeted personalization and messaging. The functionality changes that we're getting involved in are checkout queuing systems because of volume, making sure that the checkout process remains smooth, and moderating the availability of live chat and other resources that are really under a lot of pressure right now. These are dynamic changes that really systems aren't built to really prepared to throttle at these levels, and so using optimization techniques, we're able to get in there quickly and moderate these things and change them and tune them on the fly. Personalization campaigns for messaging, including delivery times, geo-based messaging around availability, promotion of stay-at-home products like video games and so forth, and donations to organizations helping those in need. One of the real interesting ones here that we're looking at for the future is the buy online and pick up in store experience. We're optimizing that and getting ready because as stores reopen, many customers, retail customers, are likely to prefer buying online and then just picking up at the store, perhaps curbside, as opposed to spending a lot of time browsing in stores. And this is something that we're building toward. A lot of our clients are building toward and getting ready for, optimizing this now because they know it's going to be really super important as they reopen. And also looking to rerun the tests, the A/B tests that have been run during this period, especially at the beginning, because of the just the really different nature in shopping patterns and buying patterns, pickup patterns, all kinds of things are kind of crazy right now. It's still valuable, but we might want to relook at some of these tests as we emerge from the crisis. That's basically the week in optimization, kind of a crazy time. We're really seeing the optimization teams, again, optimizing the whole sea change in the industry, not just a website. So let's talk about fail fast and fail cheap. One of my favorite topics. Often websites have multiple stakeholders for different sections of the site, different aspects of the site, multiple initiatives for site improvements. Of course, A/B testing offers flexibility to explore the best ideas without fear that failure will result in overall company success. Risk mitigation. Fail fast and fail cheap is about investing as little as possible early on to make sure that the investment that you make in the final rollout will pay off. So a couple of areas here, kind of a fundamental one and then a broader one. Fake it till you make it. Rather than build out an entirely new subsystem or service for your entire product catalog, mock up the UI, make it look real and maybe only available for a certain category or a few products. Hard code the data if you can. Test different layouts, different calls to action, analyze the usages and the outcomes, and then repeat this process and hone these ideas, get them right, and do this several times if necessary until you're certain that the production level coding will pay off in a higher conversion. So, you don't have to build the entire thing, build the widget exactly the way you would build it in production, but make sure that your design, make sure that your aims are going to be good ones before you make the investment to actually build it for production. Great technique for fail fast and fail cheap, fake it till you make it. So the next one I want to talk about is basically, I like to call it like measure a million times and then get out the saw. So one of the smartest types of testing is release testing, right? Rolling out a major site release slowly to small sets of users and then ramping up only after you know that the business metrics are going to be maintained or improved with a site release. Often there's many different things in a site release, and our QA teams they look at making sure the site doesn't break, making sure the code is correct, but doing a release test for business metrics is really part of the secret sauce of continuous improvement of websites. And this is great, can be used for releases, can be used for major funnel changes or whole page redesigns, like major parts of your site as well. Let's take an example. I have seen this several times. Major companies that really know what they're doing generally, they'll have for example, a new product detail page. And they'll have a product marketing and UX teams all spec out an entirely new and definitely improved product detail page, right? And the new page will work with the latest web tech that's out there, the new platforms, new tools. It'll be a faster presentation, for example, might be a spa, things like this. And then, the product team has also said, we've got a better, we've got an improved layout that we're going to put in this thing. The marketing team, has better, more effective messaging, more convincing graphics. The UX and R&D teams, maybe they've collaborated on a new 3D feature widget or something that's a pet project of the CIO or something. And they worked on this for a long time, and then dev, it takes 9 months to birth the baby to make the new PDP. And the data-driven stakeholders, now they want to have it tested, and they want to have the results available several weeks before the holiday code freeze, right? Well, I think you can see the train wreck that's going to happen here. You've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, gobs of pride, and many of the company stakeholders based on some data, some varied experiences, and a lot of guts and glitter. And now you're going to test it, right? The problem is you've got a lot of different changes that we all think are good, and we're going to test them, put together. Say we've got 20 different changes, and now you're going to test them. So when you do that, you are probably going to be able to determine with 95% stat sig, a lot of decimal places, that it failed or that it succeeded. But you're not going to know why necessarily. And you may never discover that, say 15% of the changes lifted conversion by 15%. But the other 5 that are mixed in there with the stew that you built cost you 10%. And it's going to be really hard to figure out which ingredient in the stew soured it and brought it down in flavor, right? So it's hard to unmake that pie. Failing fast means quickly testing the 20 individual ideas, mock up the new browse tool to test acceptance and usefulness before you actually build the full thing. And that's kind of related to the other one that we talked about before, mocking it up, faking it till you make it. Test some of the changes together, see how they work together. Test these things individually. Focus on honing the design, eliminating the ideas that didn't work. And then once you're satisfied with the individual changes or the groups of changes, then you can actually code them into a release candidate. We got to remember that testing is a vital part of research and design. Most testing comes before the product level coding, not after. But then once you get all of your design, your research design, and your initial testing together. You get your final product coded. Then you can test it once more to be sure that the implementation met or exceeds the previous testing results that you've done on the initial coding of it, the initial test coding. Another thing that is kind of along these lines is technology changes. Very often, once in a while, we need to re-architect our site. We need to use a new tool set because technology is advancing. If at all possible, you want to test platform changes, technology changes alone. Some UX changes may be inevitable, but it's really important to minimize unrelated changes along with the technology change. Mixing in the messaging, layout, and new features, it really muddies the waters and diminishes your optimization efforts, adding time and cost to the optimization. And this kind of rolls into, all of these roll into a concept here. Fail fast and fail cheap loves Agile. It loves an Agile development process where you can, Agile is a development process probably predominant companies, predominant level of companies use these days, but it really is important with testing and optimization because it allows you to make small changes, small tweaks quickly, and allows you to have an efficient optimization process. So that's basically a spiel on fail fast and fail cheap. And I think that we want to go over a couple of examples here about failing.
Great. Thanks, Paul. And as we move forward, I see we've had a couple of additional attendees join. If there's any questions as we move forward, please feel free to put those in your question panel. We'll answer as many of those as we can at the end of the presentation.
Okay, let's look at some of the, I've got a couple examples here of failing. This first one, this is a tea time aggregator, and they wanted to switch the default view, right? The hypothesis here is you switch the default view from the list of golf courses to a map where it's on there because location's really important and you want to golf around you, and the thought is that that's more important than the variety of course, the details of the course. Let's start out looking at locations. But then, you know, you do that. They tested this for 45, 60 days, whatever it was. It's an A/B test. The thinking is that they can filter by the radius and look at the map instead of just the list of courses. Let's look at the results here. What happened when they did that? If we go to the next slide here, we'll see that. So they segmented this by desktop and mobile. Very important to segment that way. But look at they have a drop in the click-through ratings in both from 10 to 20% click-through drops. The instant bookings, which is really their conversion, dropped 17% on desktop, 35% on mobile, and they had a account creation also dropped on both platforms, about 13, 14%. So, you know, this was clearly a bad idea. It sounded good, and I'm sure there was some anecdotal data that really went for it, but they were able to get in there and in just a matter of a few weeks, quickly switch things around, test this concept, and failed quickly, and found out that this wasn't such a good idea. And they had risk mitigation here and allowed them to, to proceed without this change. So, you know, it's not the preferential experience, the map view. Most users that booked actually looked at the list view first, or in addition to it, the list style of the search results page before they booked. And you know, both desktop and mobile had the same experience. They would have lost up to 35% of their bookings had they just gone with this change and not tested it with a small sample. And again, if they had, which, you know, if you're not testing this way, this is what you would have done. you would have made these changes that you were sure, and then you would have wrapped them in with other changes on your site, other messaging, perhaps a technology change here and there, some other changes into a larger release, and you would have softened your conversion. And you might not have never, it might have taken a long time, right? Or maybe never, but at least a long time to figure out, hey, this change we made to the funnel, to the flow, is really what cost us our bookings. So with a real quick change here, they were able to just test it out, small risk mitigation, and get the job done fast. So that's a great example of how to fail cheaply, fail fast and fail cheap. Let's look at another one. This next one is a pet supply retailer, and they wanted to make their search feature more prominent, more of a larger, more prominent placement of the search bar. And they tried 3 variations of larger box, centered box, larger text, default call to actions, things like this. And they tested it for a while, and sure enough, they got a much greater usage of their search feature. Let's look at the results overall. So search increased 37%, but unfortunately that was not a good thing. They have a problem with their search results. Either the results they're returning, or the order, or the presentation of those results. Perhaps browse is a better conversion of these guys. So making your search more prominent, making any feature of your site more prominent might increase the use of that, but that might not help your conversions. And this is also why we stress broad measurement of all the different steps from landing page to thank you page, so that when you accentuate search, and search might be used more, you'll see that perhaps you've changed other sections, other parts of your site as well. Perhaps if people are searching more, they're category browsing less, and search might not convert as high. So here they were able to quickly determine that. Couple weeks, they found out the problem. Yeah, we can get more people to search, but we need to first look into our search process, search results, because we have an issue there. So again, fail fast, fail cheap, and that's the way to succeed. So those are our 2 examples. I think, Mike, what's next?
Actually, if we have time, I got a question here. I know that I think one of the folks is going to show us, just how to make a quick change, using an optimization tool, and how to kind of quickly add and back out of certain things if it's going in the wrong direction. But I thought I might ask this question that we have from one of our attendees. Question is, and I think this is probably for you, Paul, while I test changes on our website, if one of them turns out to be a failure early on, is there a way to decrease the impact while still letting the test run and gather other data?
Yeah, and this is great. So a lot of times you'll have more than one variation. You might have 2 or 3 variations. As a matter of fact, I always say, I always recommend, always have more than one variation. It helps you kind of triangulate what you're doing, your concepts, because you're very often changing multiple aspects. And you could do a full multivariate, or you could just have a lot of different variations. But yeah, a good technique is to either turn off or minimize the traffic to losing variations. As a matter of fact, SiteSpect allows you to automate this process. If you have a multi-arm bandit, a very large multivariate test, you can automate the process with some parameters, so that periodically the results will be looked at, be evaluated, and then losing variations are tapered off, winning variations are increased in traffic, and naturally over time the winner will be reached at, and the winning variation will be decided upon while minimizing the risk and speeding up the time to find the results at stat sig. So yeah, you can not only do that, it's best practice, and you can automate it.
Okay, great. Kurt or Jim, did you want to show us real quickly, if you could, and I mean, just kind of real quickly, how you can apply sort of a quick variation to a site and, set it up to take a look at it, and then how easy it is to back out. Are you able to kind of do that for us quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. This is Kurt, and I'd be happy to jump in and show that to you. I'll do a quick screen share. Let's see here. Okay, Mike, can you see my screen okay?
I can, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So what we're looking at here is the SiteSpect UI, and in this particular case, I'm looking at a campaign, right? And here's the title of that campaign. And with any of our campaigns, there's four basic categories that we complete. General, which is the type of the campaign or where the hypothesis lies. The variations are what is actually being tested. Metrics, which is what are we going to measure, and finally the audience is who's actually going to receive this test. So in this particular case, the hypothesis that we're looking at is making an adjustment in the layout from a 3-column layout to a 4-column layout. So what I'm going to do is jump in here real quick, and you can see that we have our original, and very easy to view the original page. This is our sandbox environment. And this is what the original page looks like, okay? So here are the variation changes that we're looking at. There are 3. In particular, though, the layout that we're going to look at is right here, okay? So we'll take a look at this, and we can see that the trigger is triggering from the page source, this particular code here. And we're going to make the adjustment from 3 columns to 4 columns. So that's the basic adjustment we're going to make for this layout. And then we can go ahead and take a look at the page again to see if those changes are adequate, and it's what we want to do. And we can see now that the layout has gone from 3 to 4 columns. In addition to that, of course, when you run your analytics and your metrics, and if it's not working, you can immediately just remove this particular variation. So,
okay, and that's an example of a campaign you could run for some period of time, see how that's working. You can I guess, change and set up all the different segmentation and how many users you're going to send that to, and device types, and a bunch of different metrics. And if it's something that's working great, you can push that out to more. And if it's something that's I guess failing, then you've kind of failed fast and failed cheaply, and you can go ahead and back that out or throttle it back.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Very easy to do.
Great, appreciate that.
All right,
Kurt.
yeah.
The questions here. Thanks, Kurt. Appreciate it. A couple of the questions. Let's see here. I guess this is really kind of more about the stuff that we covered up front, Paul, relative to COVID-19 and some of the stuff we're seeing across our customer base. The question is, considering the times we're in right now, it seems we're all making changes to our sites that may play well in the moment, but may not be good long-term changes. How do we know a change we make today that looks like a success or a failure for that matter won't produce very different results 4 to 6 months from now? What's sort of your recommendations around that?
Well, you don't basically. You have hypothesis around that. And, we're testers. So we have a hypothesis that this works great now or doesn't work great now. But once the crisis abates, we get back to business as usual. We're going to see that, we want to test our hypothesis again. So, and this is true always. We always recommend revisiting things that might not have worked in one time frame. You always have to be cognizant of the season, right? So right now we're in a season we've never seen before. It's somewhat similar to holiday season, but it lasts longer than holiday season, and it has a lot different dynamics. So always retest your hypotheses, because your hypotheses has an added hypothesis of season. Always a good thing to do. That's probably what I'd say there. Always retest.
That makes a lot of sense. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them in the question panel, and we'll answer them here. I got a couple more in queue here. This one says, how do you know if a change is truly a failed experiment versus something users may come to value once they get used to the change? So I guess, the concept seems to be, people resist change in general. The question continues, is it possible results that look like failures in the first few weeks of a test wind up turning into winning changes when you test them over a longer term?
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things, you've got to you have to know your site, you have to know your users. What are your visits to conversion, right? What are those? What's the number of visits to conversion? What's the ratio of new users to existing users, returning users on your site? When you're analyzing when you're analyzing results of a test, segmentation is one of the absolute key activities that you have to do to understand the results. Remember, generally we're looking at averages. We're looking at average numbers, averages of behaviors of all of our users, new users, returning users, of course, different devices and whatnot, in different time frames. So you can try to understand, for one thing, you can try to understand how new users are adjusting, how existing users or returning users are adjusting to the change that you've made. You could, for example, only run a test for brand new users, users who have never been to your site before. You could, for example, turn off a variation for existing users. You could maybe scale back on the traffic and run longer the change to make sure that that in the long tail of time you might very well see that comes up to expectations. Yeah, just segmentation and timing and levels of traffic. Always, whenever you're testing, you want a representative sample of time. And that can be variable depending on the users that you're observing or that you're concerned about.
Great, thanks. These are really some great questions. Please feel free to keep them coming. I have another one here. Says the title of the presentation is Fail Fast, Fail Cheap. Is this just a function of all optimization tools, or is there something unique about SiteSpect to be able to fail fast and fail cheap?
So SiteSpect, the way that is unique with SiteSpect is an integral part of your stack, right? It's baked in, and so you can very quickly get in to make changes that happen in the cloud, happen before they ever get down to the user's browser, and so you are able to accomplish a test faster and thus cheaper. And with all the flexibility of the different types of tests that SiteSpect offers, because of the unique placement in the stack between the web server and the browser, you are able to have a lot more flexibility and test things either through rapid changes. We call it search and replace, is what was just demonstrated, but also testing server changes, signaling server changes without flicker, because again, we're the traffic cop. SiteSpect intercepts all requests and can modify them, and intercepts all responses and can modify them. So this puts you in a real unique position to seamlessly and very efficiently get in there and hopefully succeed fast, right? Succeed quickly. Or if you're going to fail, let's do it fast. So yeah, I think that in a real nutshell kind of describes some of the advantages that SiteSpect brings.
Great. I think we got time for one more question. I apologize if there's anyone who doesn't have the question answered, please feel free to hit us up at info@sitespect.com. Let's see if I can pick one that'll be applicable here. So this one says, do you sometimes find that a positive change in one segment can be a complete failure in another? For example, is it likely we might see something perform great in one part of the country or the world and completely fail in another? or be very successful with certain devices and completely fail with others. Can you share some stories about that?
Yeah. So one of them, deals with seasonality. It's kind of an obvious thing. Um, we have a lot of geographic centered variations where, depending on what region of the world you're in, it may be a cold weather, warm weather thing, and you can play off of those to both find out, to explore, and understand personalizations in different regions. You can do that through segmentation. You can also do it through triggering to trigger different responses through different geographic regions. That's one. Another one is sports. You know, targeting and testing around geographic centered sports things is one that you know, some regions of the world prefer American football, and some prefer European football. The iconography and messaging testing can really take advantage of that personalization level of variation. And then there was another one I had in mind. Oh, yeah, you mentioned devices. That's number one. Faster and faster, the online world is moving to mobile, especially for certain segments of the industry. Always look at mobile differently, tablet differently, and desktop differently. Segment those out, understand them separately. I guarantee you that if you don't do that, you're not going to get the results optimized as well as they could be. You can test separately, or you can test together and segment separately to learn. But again, like I said before, segmentation, whether it's devices, users, geographies, new users versus returning and whatnot, that's the goal. That's how you really understand how certain users, how your site is meeting the needs of certain users and different types of users, and how your changes apply differently in those different segments. Absolutely.
Great. Thanks so much. Well, we're a little over here, so I'm just going to try to wrap up in the interest of time, and I know everyone's very busy these days. Thanks, Paul, Kurt, and Jim, for joining us and for this information on Fail Fast and Fail Cheap. Definitely want to thank all our attendees for joining today. If you have additional questions or want any additional information on today's topic or our SiteSpect, please feel free to email us at info@sitespect.com. We hope you'll join us next week for our topic, boosting order values. Until then, we wish you and your family continued safety and good health. Have a great day.